What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stuckey.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me, as always, my co-host, Stephen Young of Roto-Grinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. And we're back after the break. This week, we're talking bets for the Cookout 400 at Richmond Raceway here on Running Hot. Last time the NASCAR Cup Series raced, we were at Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Brickyard 400. Kyle Larson was able to grab the win. Maybe a little bit of a controversial late race restart, but to me, and based off the SMT data, it looks like he fired off at the same time as Ryan Blaney, was able to get the lead on that late restart. Blaney had to save fuel anyway after Keselowski ended up pitting because he was trying to save fuel as well. So Larson won. Reddick was able to grab second place from Ryan Blaney, and Ryan Blaney rounded out the podium there. So Indy, a little bit of a mixed bag. It was a lot of single file at times, but at the end, when you had guys on different strategies, I think there was a lot of passing. So what were your thoughts on Indy, Stevie? Did you prefer the road course, or are you glad we were back on the oval? What were your thoughts on the race?
Very much glad we were back on the oval. It kind of spread out a little bit. We saw a fantastic Xfinity race too. The Cup race, it spread out. It was boring at times, but I still think it was better than this car on a road course. So I think, like you said, the last 20 laps of that race, there was so many different strategies, and we saw a lot kind of come into play. And I mean, one of the best cars won the race, and that's kind of what you're always hoping for. I thought it was solid. Happy for Kyle Larson after what happened with him with the speeding penalty during the Indy 500, but you could tell, Nick, and I know you're an IndyCar guy, but you could tell that Larson picked up on some stuff with all the time that he got in the Indy 500, like practices and stuff, because he was passing people like nobody else. So, hey, homework pays off, I guess.
Yeah, now, certainly a lot of that was, his strategy. He was not having to save fuel, so he could go full rich. He had fresher tires. But also, you still got to be able to set up those passes. You got to be able to draft in the right spots, and I do think he absolutely learned something from his time in the Indy 500. And here's what I really did like about the race is it did kind of set up, like, especially the Xfinity Series races you were talking about, it really looked like an Indy 500 in the Xfinity Series. Cup Series, not quite as much, but the Xfinity Series, it definitely looked like you kind of had to set up your passes and use the draft, and certainly in the Cup Series as well. So congrats to Kyle Larson. I did live bet him. I wasn't able to track it in the Action app because we can't track a stale line, and by the time I bet it and got to the app to track it, it had already moved. But I did drop it in the Action Network Discord, so hopefully a few people were able to get Kyle Larson live in that race as well. But we are on to Richmond Raceway. This is the second time we'll be running at Richmond this year. Earlier this year at Richmond, kind of an interesting race there. Denny Hamlin taking the win in an overtime finish after, he admittedly probably jumped the final restart a little bit, fired off a little bit before the restart zone. Martin Truex Jr. on the day led the most laps, had a very strong car. So definitely those Gibbs cars were strong. Joey Logano finished second, was second in green flag speed. So certainly we can use previous Richmond, but there's some wrinkles this time out, Stevie. Before we get to the little wrinkles with the tires, just talk about Richmond in general, refresh everybody's mind on what racing is like here.
Yeah, I mean, it's short track, flat track racing. You have to have speed at the beginning of the run, and you have to maintain it throughout the run. with this new car, these races have been kind of all over the place, but Richmond has been somewhat consistent. Outside of Richmond 2 last year, where like we just saw Chris Buescher show up at it with speed out of nowhere. But overall, like if you look back at the 5 races that we've had here with the next gen car, it's basically the same like 4 or 5 guys that are always really solid here. So Denny, we know Denny's going to be good. He's good at every short flat track. We're still waiting on that like Martin Truex Jr. final season farewell win, and obviously, like you said, he dominated this race earlier this year. So I think we're looking at Toyota, but Ford should show up and Chevy should be in the mix. So I think overall, racing at Richmond this weekend should be kind of good. You're going to talk about the next thing, and it's like, let's see what that does. But yeah, overall, I'm happy for the race this week.
Yeah, me too. It should be really, really competitive. And I will say, I don't think Buescher's win totally came out of nowhere. First of all, he had three wins on the season there last year, but the year before that, he was leading a little bit at Richmond. I think he ended up fading to 3rd. So good track for Chris Buescher as well here at Richmond, but certainly getting a win, maybe given his lack of winning history, was a little surprising. But now we see he's a guy that can pip off a few wins per year now, so no longer surprising, which may have been surprising at the time. But Richmond Raceway, known for its high tire wear, this place chews up tires. We see in stage 2 and in stage 3, very often teams will go for a 2-stop strategy, even though they could make it on 1 stop in terms of fuel. We'll see teams go for 2 stops because it ends up netting out faster thanks to the high tire wear. So even though you're making an extra green flag pit stop, just all the time you save by having fresher tires ends up working out in your favor. And speaking of tires, we are bringing the option tire to Richmond this week. Yes, that's right. The option tire that we ran at the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro will be available for teams to use this weekend at Richmond. I think they have 2 sets available of the option tire that they can run. And the option tire is just a softer compound. It's meant to give you more grip, but it's also meant to fall off faster. So at a track with already high tire wear, bringing in a tire that'll fall off even faster. How long are those tires going to last, Stevie? And what does it do for this race?
I think it adds a lot of potential strategy. Do you save an option tire if there's a caution with 30 laps to go? And, how much of a hole are you in when it comes to 30 laps to go? And if you don't have a set of those tires. So I think it's really interesting when you use the other set. I think if I am a crew chief, I have a set in my pits. And like, if I don't use them, I don't use them. But if there's a caution with like less than 40 laps to go, I'm putting those things on. So, it'd be different than the All-Star race just because there's going to be more tire wear. It was a fresh repave at the All-Star race, so I think that is where the option tire is going to be a lot more interesting. We're really excited for the option tire at the All-Star race, and it didn't seem to make a huge deal. I think when you're going to have fall-off on top of that option tire at Richmond this weekend, it's going to make a big deal. So it's really going to come down to, when do I use that first set? Like, is it the end of stage 2 to try to get track position for the final stage, in that last pit stop? So I think it just opens up all kinds of strategy. And, we're talking playoffs, right? Like we're in the thick of playoff talk. Bubba Wallace made a huge gain on Ross Chastain at Indy. We didn't talk about that, but Buescher kind of dropped back. So, Bubba, like he's there now. Like now it's not, hey, I have to win a race. It's now, hey, I have a chance to get in on points.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted to talk about, was how the tires could impact playoff strategy. First, real quick, though, I do agree with you. I think you save a set, if you can, for the end of the race in case there is a late race yellow. Now, Richmond doesn't tend to produce late race yellows, but we did have one earlier this year. And you never know. Alex Bowman a few years ago was able to steal a win off of a late race yellow at Richmond as well. And then playoff picture, could a team save a set of the options for maybe end of stage 1, end of stage 2 to try to grab some stage points if you're a Bubba Wallace, a Ross Chastain, a Chris Buescher, or a Ty Gibbs? Those are the 4 that really need to worry about points. And I do throw Ty Gibbs in there, even though he's 40 points above the cut line, because he went from 70 above to 40 above over the last couple races. And anything can happen at Daytona, right? And then if you have one other bad race outside of Daytona, and maybe we get a new winner at Daytona, all of a sudden Ty Gibbs could be in trouble here. So I think if you're, any of those four drivers, you could think about using a set of options at the end of a stage to try to grab yourself some extra stage points. And I do believe, like you said, the option tires will help you move through the field a little bit better here. They were definitely faster at North Wilkesboro. The problem is, as you and I have talked about with this car, it's so hard to pass on shorter, flatter tracks with this car that the tires didn't quite do enough at North Wilkesboro, even though the options were clearly faster, I think, in the All-Star race. It's just, if you were able to aero block, you like Joey Logano did for the whole All-Star race, you were able to be just fine. So any other intangibles here at Richmond before we dive into our bets?
Crew chiefs. We're going to talk about it with some of our bets. You and I didn't talk pre-show about it, but I can already tell by some of the names that you have, like, in your bets, that you're on the same page with me when it comes to this week. Like, trusting a crew chief is huge this week because you have to trust that they're going to make all the right decisions. And a lot of these crew chiefs try to make the right decisions and come out on the wrong side. So I think crew chiefs are very important this week because, I mean, even Christopher Bell with Adam Stevens out this week, It's a huge hit to him. I mean, he's one of the fastest guys when we look at Richmond and short flats, but do we trust a backup crew chief to handle a strategy type of race more than we trust like Adam Stevens? So my answer is no, I don't trust him. So Adam Stevens can be in his ear the whole time and it's still not the same. Making decisions on the fly is a huge part of crew chiefing. So crew chiefs is another thing that I really am going to play a factor into betting this week.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I will say having the multiple week break, I think, will help in that situation because the 20 team there of Christopher Bell will have pretty much everything planned out. They'll know what they want to do in stage 2. They'll know what they want to do in stage 3. It's just those on the fly calls if caution comes, something like that, right? Yeah. That's where I really think it could make a difference. But I think just the timing of that happening to Adam Stevens is probably the best possible timing for it to have happened over a longer break to give that 20 team enough time to prepare here. But that is going to do it for our Richmond preview. It's time to dive into some bets for the Cookout 400. As always, we're going to take you for a lap around Richmond, 4 turns, 1 pick from Stevie, 1 pick from me per turn before we drive into victory lane. So we're going to throw the green flag on the Cookout 400 at Richmond Raceway and dive into turn 1. Our green flag's out. Turn 1, Stevie. We just talked about him in the playoff picture. Looks like you got a top 10 bet on one of those drivers.
Yeah, I got Bubba Wallace for a top 10 at plus 175. I like this, and I'm showing value all the way down to plus 125. So one of my favorite value bets to start the week here is Bubba Wallace. Like, we look at the short flat tracks in general, and Bubba has been consistently running right there, that like top 10 mark. Like, he hasn't had all the top 10 finishes, but the speed is there. I don't think he's had a top 10 finish yet on a short flat this season. So the speed is the most important part for me. He was a top 5 car earlier this year at Richmond and finished 13th because of the late race stuff. So I'm just betting on the speed again. I mean, it seems like a consistent thing for me when it comes to Bubba Wallace. I'm just continuing to show value because he's being undervalued because of his finishes instead of his speed. So eventually they're just going to start, rattling off these top 10 finishes. And again, he's in the playoff picture. So could they be a little bit more, aggressive when it comes to strategy? And, aggressive strategy is either going to be a top 5 or probably 20th. So I'll take my chances.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, actually. I'm going to tell you on this bet here, Bubba Wallace top 10 plus 175. I had him 44.5% for a top 10 finish in the first Richmond race, and that's only gone up. So I'm right there with you around plus 125 as fair value for Bubba Wallace on this bet. We know he's good at the short, flat tracks. I mean, we've seen he's good at Martinsville. He's held his own at New Hampshire and Phoenix, for example. So I definitely like this, and Richmond's been a really strong track for him over the years as well. Finished 13th earlier this year, but definitely has the ability to run inside the top 10 here at Richmond. So like the plus money, the significant plus money on Bubba Wallace for a top 10 finish. For my turn one pick, I already tracked this in the Action Network app all the way back on Monday. And I'm going with Joey Logano for a top 5 finish at plus 180. And we just need to run the numbers here. I mean, the last 16 races at Richmond, he has 9 top 5 finishes. That's over 50%, which would be like right around minus 105, minus 110 as fair odds if that were his true long-term number. Now, I'm not saying that is his true long-term number, but it shows there's a long way from where he was at plus 175, plus 180 to where his top 10 rate has been over a large enough sample size. And we talked about it at the top here with Richmond. Joey Logano had the second best green flag speed, top 3 in flags for me in the first Richmond race. Hey, he won the All-Star race, which has this option tire built in as well. So Joey Logano, top 5 finish, plus 180. I honestly don't need to go really further into my analysis than that, but adding a guy like Paul Wolfe, right, who is, as you mentioned, a great crew chief and always willing to try things to maybe snag an extra win, but I don't even think we necessarily need him here. We just need Paul Wolfe to not screw it up, and he usually doesn't do that. So Joey Logano, top 5, plus 180 in turn 1 for me.
Paul Wolfe. Give Paul Wolfe an option tire. We just saw it at the All-Star race. I mean, like, he's going to put Joey Logano in a good spot. You mentioned how good Joey Logano is at Richmond. I mean, if we look at the 5 next-gen races here, he ranks first in speed above Denny Hamlin. So, I mean, it's hard not to have interest in a guy at this. I mean, he's not – because of where Larson and Bell and Hamlin and Truex are as far as, like, betting odds, like, we're getting a little bit of value on these guys that should be up there running with these guys. So I like Joey Logano as well.
Yeah, definitely. So turn 1, Stevie has Bubba Wallace for a top 10 finish, plus 175. I have Joey Logano, top 5 finish, plus 180. Halfway through the first set of turns, let's go into turn 2. All right, turn 2, Stevie. This is the, we're on the same bet here, but mine's even deeper than that, but give us your bet.
Yeah, so coming into the week, I was looking at Ryan Blaney, and you're on the same page too. I'm going Alex Bowman over Ryan Blaney, plus 130 over there on BetMGM. You look at Ryan Blaney, he absolutely dominates Alex Bowman in every stat on short flats except for Richmond. Ryan Blaney has not figured out Richmond. It's been a track that has really just kind of thrown him a curveball. We talk about it on some of the steep tracks where he's really good and then he has like a couple where he just hasn't figured it out. Blaney hasn't figured out Richmond. He's unloaded with speed here a couple times and still not been able to perform with the best. So it's more of just how can I get some money against Ryan Blaney this week? And I know you're kind of on the same page, but if we look at his last 3 Richmond finishes, his best finish is 14th. Alex Bowman, he's a guy that has definitely finished. He's finished inside the top 10 2 of the last 5 here. He's finished inside the top 20 in 5 straight. I don't necessarily think Alex Bowman is a lot better than Ryan Blaney. It's more of just I'm getting plus 130 against Ryan Blaney on a guy in a Hendrick car. I mean, that's why I'm making the bet this week more than anything else.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I was looking at the data between Bowman and Blaney, and it's been pretty close between them in the next-gen era, but Bowman got pretty unlucky in the first race this year. I think he definitely had a better car than Blaney. Blaney hasn't, like you said, hasn't been able to figure out Richmond, and for me, it's the oddball high tire wear tracks he hasn't been able to figure out. Richmond, Darlington, Homestead, and Bristol earlier this year, which surprisingly threw us some high tire wear with the cording and stuff. Blaney struggled at that one as well. But like the classic high tire wear tracks, Old Texas, Old Atlanta, Auto Club, he was fine at those. So it's like the oddball ones, either the steeper ones or the shorter ones. He's really struggled with high tire wear. So I'm right there with you. My turn to pick is fade Ryan Blaney. So I will be tailing you on this Alex Bowman plus 130 bet. Definitely like that at BetMGM. I even took, and I'm not saying you should, this is more of like a play that I'm happy to make, but I don't necessarily think other people are comfortable risking. But I even took Ryan Blaney to not win at minus 2,000. I put 2 units on it to win 0.1 units. Blaney's never finished in the top 5 here, let alone have a shot at winning. Now, he did lead a bunch of laps, but that was only because he had the pole position and he had track position, but he ended up fading in that race as well. So just a really tough racetrack for Ryan Blaney. Only one finish better than 10th here, and it wasn't even a top 5. So fade Ryan Blaney in any way you can. Maybe it's in the top Ford market. We talked about how the Fords could be here. Blaney is one of the favorites in the top Ford market. That should open up value elsewhere among the top Ford market. So no specific pick here. Just fade Ryan Blaney where you can. I still see, Joey Logano minus 130 over Ryan Blaney out there. I would like that for sure if that's available to you. So fade Ryan Blaney in turn 2, Stevie.
Yeah, listen, I feel you. I agree with you. I'll be looking at matchup bets against Ryan Blaney after qualifying. I hope Blaney goes out and qualifies top 5. That's my hope. Is we go out and we get a top 5 qualifying effort from Ryan Blaney, and we get some plus money head to heads, because that's what I'm going to be looking at post qualifying.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great way to approach Ryan Blaney if you aren't able to get certain prices out there right now. All right, so 2 turns down. We got a little bit of a backstretch here at Richmond Raceway. Before we get into turn 3, I want to remind you all Running Hot is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, turn 3. Stevie, what do you got for us?
I'm going to go back to that Ford camp, but I'm actually going to go on the plus side here. I got Josh Berry, top 10, plus 130. Rodney Childers, we'll start with that. He's going to have a really good plan. Josh Berry is really good on short flats. He drove from outside the top 30 to an 11th place finish here earlier this year, and he did it with speed. So the fact that we were kind of worried about speed earlier this year and passing, and Berry was able to drive through the field. He ranked 7th in speed earlier this season. So I really like Berry. We're getting that plus money. We're getting a lot of plus money, Josh Berry stuff. And this is just the tip for me. I bet multiple Josh Berry things this week already. So very interested in Josh Berry. I've been debating on just betting his outright because I like him so much this week. It's just I'm not showing a ton of value at 25 to 1. BetMGM does have it at 30 to 1. So if you want to do a little quarter unit sprinkle on Josh Berry's outright, I think he's going to be good. And Richmond with the tire wear, Josh Berry is a short track guy. This is what he grew up maintaining tires on a long run. So I think that this could be a really big week for Josh Berry.
Yeah, I agree with you. Josh Berry, great at the short flat tracks, whether it's Martinsville, New Hampshire, and then, of course, Richmond. Hey, he had that second place finish, I think it was with Hendrick Motorsports when he was filling in for the injured Chase Elliott last year at Richmond. So a little bit of strategy there for sure, but he's got a strategy crew chief, Rodney Childers. He's got a crew chief also that knows how to set up cars really well. So I agree with you. Josh Berry should be looking strong for a top 10 finish. But for my turn 3 pick, I'm going to go to his teammate, Chase Briscoe, for a top 10 finish. And honestly, Stevie, I can't believe this number. 7 to 1 on Chase Briscoe for a top 10 finish. There is one prominent book out there hanging a 7 to 1 number. Everywhere else is around 4 to 1 or shorter that I've seen. Maybe 5 to 1 or shorter that I have seen. So 7 to 1 certainly off market here. Look, Chase Briscoe is good at the short, flat tracks as well. He's always been good at Martinsville. He finished 2nd in New Hampshire earlier this year. Yeah, there was the rain tire, but he finished 10th at New Hampshire last year. He finished 9th at Phoenix earlier this year. He has a win at Phoenix. He's been really good at Richmond as well. He just never has finished inside the top 10, but he's finished 11th, and 12th over the past 5 Richmond races. So that's right on the cusp of a top 10 finish. So when you're getting these borderline top 10 finishes and you're 7 to 1, it's just far too long. I gotta go Chase Briscoe. Hey, his teammate is plus 130 in the exact same market. So I gotta go 7 to 1 Chase Briscoe for a top 10 finish.
Yeah, the thing is too is like now we're adding in this option tire, and you have to add a little bit of variance in for the option tire, whether it be good or bad. So I mean, taking these 7-1 top tens where they actually have speed in them makes a lot of sense. Like this is a guy, like you said, he's finished top 15 in 3 of the last 5 races here with the next gen car. So, and 11th, 12th, 11th, like those aren't like, those are right on that borderline. Like those are better than like Bubba Wallace's, who I talked about betting earlier. So, yeah, I'm in. You talked me into a Chase Briscoe top 10 bet.
All righty, 3 turns down. That means we have 1 turn left, and that's turn 4. All right, final turn. Steve, you're going over to a group bet. Interesting. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, okay, really quick. I was getting in my Chase Briscoe top 10 bet, but
Hey, gotta do what you got to do.
I'm going to go back to my boy Josh Berry here. There's Group D, Group 4, whatever site you're looking at. You know, they're almost all the same when it comes to this one. It's Bowman, Kyle Busch, Chastain, Berry. I'm going back to Josh Berry, plus 270 here to win this group. I like Alex Bowman. Don't get me wrong. Kyle Busch is, I don't know. This team's out to lunch right now. They cannot figure out, and they have a lot of issues. I mean, if you're Kyle Busch, you were probably really excited for the 2-week break. Like, hey, guys, we need to figure some stuff out. And then you got Ross Chastain in this group who, when we look at the short flats, I don't necessarily picture Ross Chastain as like a top 10 guy. He finished 15th here earlier this year. He was like 14th in speed. And if we look at just the next gen car on the short flats this year, really the only track that he was somewhat decent on in speed was Iowa. Josh Berry ranks ahead of all of these guys on short flats and speed, and you're getting almost the best odds out of this group on Josh Berry. So I'm going to go Josh Berry. I'm going to trust the speed. I think they're going to show up with a lot of speed this weekend, and hopefully he qualifies better than he did earlier this year at Richmond, because that's where this bet gains a lot of value.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Josh Berry should be the favorite in this group, and they're basically all at like plus 270 range. So I definitely like Josh Berry. You know, I can definitely see upside for all the other 3, but it's never been like a consistent upside at Richmond, and maybe it was more so for Kyle Busch, but not with the season he is having. So definitely like Josh Berry in this group. For my final turn, I'm going to take Brad Keselowski to get a top 5 finish at plus 250. And Brad Keselowski, he's just so good at high tire wear. He's so good at managing his tires. He's really good at Richmond itself. We look at the year that Chris Buescher won, or the race Chris Buescher won, Keselowski actually led the most laps. So RFK has nailed it at Richmond a couple times here. Keselowski also had a strong race at Richmond 2 years ago when, you know, Buescher led a few laps there as well. Keselowski looked quite strong, ended up fading at the end. I think he had some issues, but was really strong throughout that race as well. He ended up 4th in stage 1 there. So Richmond, a very good track for Brad Keselowski, and he's just great at managing his tires. Look at where he's finished really well this year. He won at Darlington, a track where you have to manage your tires. He finished 3rd at Bristol when we unexpectedly had tire cording and you had to manage your tires. And those are really the 2 kind of super high tire wear races we've had this year. And Brad Keselowski finished on the podium, including winning one of those races. So give me Brad Keselowski top 5 finish plus 250. I like this down even below plus 200. If that's, I think it has moved from plus 250 from when I bet it. So when I track it, it'll be at a little bit shorter number. Just because I want to track it after the podcast comes out so you all can get the best line possible. But yeah, Brad Keselowski, anything all the way down to even a little bit below plus 200, I would bet him for a top 5 finish.
Yeah, I'll save my Brad Keselowski thoughts for this thing that we like to do called Victory Lane.
I like it. So let's waste no time. We finished the lap at Richmond. We're taking the checkered flag and driving into Victory Lane, and you spoiled the party here, but what's our Victory Lane pick, Stevie?
Yeah, we're going to Keselowski 19-1 to win this race. You know, you just copy paste everything that you just said. High tire wear. Brad Keselowski is one of the best, if not the best, at this racetrack type. Like, Kevin Harvick's gone. Kevin Harvick was the king of high tire wear tracks. Now Keselowski has kind of moved into that, hey, we have a high tire wear track, and you're adding, and you're adding in like the option tire. Like, sign me up here for Brad Keselowski at 19-1. I just don't think that the books are valuing how good he is at Richmond on top of how good he is at high tire wear tracks, and then factoring in this like option tire. So, and he has a great crew chief that's very aggressive. So,
Yeah.
I mean, everything going
say,
well
Matt
for
McCall
Keselowski.
is willing to take some strategy risks, and that
Oh, yeah.
definitely increases your upside. So, maybe they end up finding something interesting in the strategy that we don't end up thinking of. Maybe you run the option tires really hard for the first 15 laps of stage 2 or stage 3, and then you pit and it stays green the whole time and you just win by a mile. Who knows?
Yep.
Who knows what these teams have modeled out or figured out you may be able to do, especially before you, like, let's say you restart stage 3 from close to the lead, like Keselowski could do. You throw on the option tire, just hard run it for 15, 20 laps of that stage, and then you just split the stage in half from there for your second stop. That could be a winning strategy if you're able to get out to a huge lead because you're not yet in traffic. I think that could be a really interesting strategy. But, this is where all these crew chiefs, they have something. They're able to, especially with a multi-week break, take the time to model different things out. And Matt McCall is very aggressive. Keselowski has a win in the bag. He's safe. He can go for a win if he wants. So Brad Keselowski, 19-1. Everything we just talked about is our victory lane pick. So that is going to do it for us. Thank you for listening to the Cookout 400 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. We'll be back next week to talk bets for the Firekeepers Casino 400 at Michigan International Speedway. Should be a fun race there. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you back next week on Running Hot from Action Network.